Good afternoon, Hell Stalkers. This is Derek Klein coming to you from the Hell Palace. We've had a bunch of requests for it, and we're here today. We've got it, the 2017 Hell Forecast. Hope you guys like the new logo. Lots of new technology coming out from Helltrace this year. So we are really excited about 2017. We've been talking about this year for the last 2 years, guys. So we've been talking about how this was going to be an active Hell season for 2 years now. Okay, we're still there. We're still forecasting an active Hell season. We're going to go into a lot of the details of what we're expecting for this season. But we put our money where our mouth is. We've developed a ton of new technology for this year because we thought this year was going to be such a big year. So we've spent a ton of money developing a lot of new technology, new software, and we've got it available for you today. So it's ready to rock and roll. We're ready to rock and roll. 2017 Hell Forecast, Hell season is here. So let's take a look at it. First of all, before I jump into the forecast, here's just a quick peek at some of the new technology that we have. Apartments, whatever you want to search for, pops up the information over here behind me and gives you their phone number. Anything that you want to know about a commercial property, boom, right there. Check this out. Last hell date on any address that you want. Plug the address in, it gets that for you. Even more importantly, you can get any hell date that you want for a specific address, and you can mark the type of damage. Lots more about this later, but today we're here to talk about the Hell Forecast. If you've got some questions about this, give us a shout. info@helltrace.com. You can email me there, or you can give us a call, 855-334-4245. We'll talk more about that. So let's take a look at first. To know what's going to happen in 2016, we have to start with what occurred in 2016. So let's take a look at it here. 2016 ended with 5,600 filtered Hell reports, which is higher than what actually occurred in 2013 through 2015. So we've had basically a gradual increase since 2013. This last year ending really right at average. If you remember, we forecasted to be at average or slightly above average for last year. That's where we nailed it. We landed right there where we thought we would. The most active date, April 26, 2016. That was the busiest individual Hell day of the year. 275 reports of Hell on that particular day. San Antonio had the most damaging Hellstorm in Texas history. Of course, Dallas had the 3 huge Hell hits that impacted that area. And again, Texas, pretty historic Hell season for the state of Texas. It was extremely active. The only area that was a bust in our 2000 forecast, sorry guys, the Southeast, we thought it was going to be above average. It was not. And so we missed that one on you guys, and we do apologize. We want, and we're hoping for a big Hell season in the Southeast this year. It's been a while. All right, the current pattern that we're in right now, okay, so we've looked at where we came from. Now we're going to take a look at where we're headed. We are in a weak La Nina pattern. Keep that in mind. That's important, right? We're in a weak La Nina pattern. We just came from a strong El Nino pattern, okay? So that big change is what we're using for our forecast, okay? That's what we've been forecasting to happen. We knew last year that we were going to go into a strong El Nino. It ended up being a record-breaking El Nino, and we knew that the Earth was going to try to balance itself out, and that was going to put us in a La Nina phase. Okay, so indications are that we may actually leave the La Nina and go towards neutral, but the damage has already been done. We've already gone into La Nina. All right, the PDO. So these are some other things that we look at as far as pattern. It's essentially neutral, and indications of it are going to stay that way. So we look at a lot of different things when we go into making these forecasts. Even though we're in a fairly weak La Nina, the winter has acted like it was a strong La Nina. Again, you got to pay attention to where we came from. Been a big transition to go from a strong El Nino to a weak La Nina. It's not the same as going from a weak El Nino to a weak La Nina. It's a lot different. So that's what's been causing the atmosphere to act like it's a more significant La Nina. And that's how we've been forecasting, and that's why we've been forecasting an active Hell season for the year 2017. So what we want to do is we want to find other years that match up with what we just talked about. So as of mid-January, there are 2 possibles, what we call ENSO. That's the El Nino phase that we're in, right? The La Nina or El Nino. The patterns for spring both have similar outcomes. Doesn't really matter what our phase is going to be because they're both going to have similar outcomes. Most likely pattern is that we go from a weak La Nina trending to neutral. If that happens, our analog years, the years that match up to that, would be 1996, 2001, and 2012. The less likely pattern is that we go from a weak La Nina and we maintain or strengthen that La Nina. The analog years for that include 1999, 2008, and 2011. You guys remember 8 and 11, those are pretty significant years for hail, but none of these actually did too bad. So the chance of us going into a neutral phase, we're going to shoot for about a 75% chance of that happening. Staying or strengthening the La Nina, about a 20% chance of that happening. And we're not coming out of El Nino, or we're not going back into El Nino. 5% chance of that happening. So the chance is pretty low. So let's take a look at each analog year. 2012, that was actually the last above average hail season that the U.S. had. Above average hail activity was an early season, but we had about 7,000 filtered hail reports. Keep in mind, we had 5,600 last year. That was average. That's a pretty significant bump in the amount of hail. March 2nd, a lot of you probably remember that one. I remember that one very, very much. March 2nd had the most significant event of the year. There were 469 reports. Last year's biggest, 275. Okay, so that's quite a bit bigger. I'm not saying that we're going to have an event that big, but that's a pretty significant one. April 28th, 2012, costliest hailstorm in U.S. history. It wasn't Dallas. It wasn't San Antonio. It was in St. Louis. April 28th, 2012. Most of you remember that one. Widespread baseball to softball size hail. The secret event of that day was actually Louisville. A lot of you worked that one as well. That was a big time storm in Louisville. 2001, an active hail season. Again, notice the trend, right? Relative to decreased numbers of reports. Okay, so there's about 5,600 reports, which would match what we had last year, right? They're kind of like, that's not good. But keep in mind, back in 2001, technology did not enable people to report hail like they do today. You can't get on your cell phone and shoot in a report to the National Weather Service. Those numbers are a lot lower because of that. So if you look at the years surrounding 2001, there's actually a spike that occurs in 2001, and that's because there was a lot more hail in 2001 than the years around it. And so, yeah, it was an active hail season. Even though the numbers don't compare that way, it was an active hail season. All right, so April 10th had the most damaging hailstorm in U.S. history. St. Louis again. So until 2012, April 10th, 2001 held the most damaging hailstorm, and that was in St. Louis also. That's number one. Number two, St. Louis, you got them both. All right, so fall season was quite active this year as well. There were a couple of big outbreaks, one in October and one in November. Let's see here, 1996, that was our other analog year, another active hail season. Again, the numbers come down. 1996, technology was much less than it was in 2001. So those numbers come down. It was a lot harder to call in those reports to get that information in. So, but again, if you look at the years relative around it, there's a spike in 1996. Those numbers jump up. May 3rd had a storm hit Louisville, Kentucky with baseball-size hail. So again, that was actually right around the Kentucky Derby. So a little crazy active weather around that. So based on the limited information that we have from 1996, the year was really active though. Most of the activity occurring during the spring with no signs of any significant outbreaks outside of that. So that's a look at what 1996 looks like. So here's what we want to take away from the whole process, everything that happened. All the analog years that we have researched have been above average to even very active. Okay, so everything says that we're going to have an active hail season. We also look at some of those years, some of that outside scenario that we stay in La Nina, those three analog years that we had, 1999, 2008, 2011, those are all extremely active as well. Okay, so everything's pointing towards us having a pretty active hail season. The analogs all appear to have at least one early season event, so that's February through early March. So we've had some okay events. January will actually go down as tied for the third busiest hail month of January that we've had in the U.S. 1999, which was one of our analog years, being one of the worst hail seasons. So that's a look at, again, we expect that we're going to have an early season event, okay? And we're not talking about the couple of events that we've already had. We're talking about another more significant hail event. La Nina is very favorable for increased severe weather, and even coming out of a La Nina, the atmosphere is still going to feel the effects a few months after. Okay, so we talked about it. We came from a strong El Nino, and we're transitioning to a weak La Nina. That big phase change that we're going through is actually what's going to cause that difference in the atmosphere. Okay, that's what's going to make us have the active severe weather season. That's why the atmosphere is acting like we're in a stronger La Nina than what we really are. The damage, like I said, has already been done. All right, so here's what we got for 2017. Let's take a look at it. After a cold first half of February, if you're up in the north, you know what we're talking about. In the south, it's actually been pretty warm. But after a cold first half of February, the weather pattern turns more favorable for severe weather. Okay, so get ready for that. We're going to have some severe weather kicking off as we get into the second half of February. The southeast looks to be the most likely area to be very active compared to average numbers. Okay, so all these areas we're going to talk about is compared to average. So if I say you're going to have an average hail season in Denver, you're going to have several hailstorms in Denver. Okay, if I say that you're going to have an average hail season in Oklahoma City, that's quite a bit of hail. Now, if I say you're going to have an average hail season in Boston, you may not see anything. So keep that in mind as when you're seeing these numbers, and we'll try to explain that. So this season may be fairly front-loaded as well. So we think that there's going to be a lot of stuff up front, with June kind of dying off pretty quickly. All right, overall, 2017 is expected to be active, above average, and amounts of hail really across most of the nation. So let's look at it here. From the map standpoint, this is what you guys want to see, right? All right, so the northeast here, near average, okay? Back it over here. Average in the plains. So again, near average in the northeast, not a whole lot of hail activity, okay? But when we go to average for the front range, that's quite a bit of hail activity, okay? We're usually going to forecast average here because it's the mountains that create the hail. So as long as the mountains are there, we're going to have hail in Cheyenne and Denver and Colorado Springs and Billings. Heck, if you want to go all the way up here outside of my map, I can barely reach, to Calgary, it's going to be the same thing, okay? Above average in the plains. Now, this is pretty significant. When you start talking about above average here in the plains, that's a lot of hail because there's a lot of hail in the plains, okay? So we're expecting a lot of hail in the plains. And take a look at it right here. Very active, okay? Very active in the southeast. That's what we're expecting, okay? Last year we missed the southeast, but it's already started off. It's already pretty active in the southeast. There's been a lot more hail compared to last year in the southeast. Expect that trend to continue. Expect it to pick up and get worse. So we're talking from basically eastern Oklahoma, eastern Texas, points east, okay? St. Louis, yeah, we think you're going to get some more hail. Kentucky, Atlanta, boy, I'm hoping Atlanta would get a good hailstorm. That'd be nice. All right, here's the chances, okay? So below average, pretty small, right? 10%, 30% chance of an average season, and a 60% chance of an above average hail season this year. So again, we're expecting things to get pretty crazy around the U.S., and that's what we expect to happen. Bold predictions, 2017 will feature a high-end severe weather outbreak event. So we're talking lots of tornadoes, lots of hail. There'll probably be a couple of those this year. The southeast will see at least one widespread severe weather outbreak. That doesn't include what we've already had. We've had some, I would say, moderate scale events. I expect we have something quite a bit bigger than what we've already had in the southeast. Oklahoma City, Dallas, Denver, I think they all get hit with hail this year. And I think St. Louis, maybe Nashville and Atlanta, I think you probably pick 1, 2, or 3 of those cities, and you're going to have hail in one or even 2, and maybe even all 3 of those cities as well this year. These are all based off of regular events, okay? So these are, if we look back in history at some of these different cities, this is what we see in a pattern like this. So not locked in, you know, don't go spend $1 million on setting up an office in one of these cities because we said it's going to hail. But it looks like there's a pretty good shot that we might get some hail in one of those cities. All right, so that's it. That's a look at our forecast for this year. We're excited to show it to you. Again, if you have any questions, we're going to do several different things to kind of talk about this. So we're going to do some webinars. We're going to do some live chat stuff to kind of chat with you back and forth. If you have questions, please feel free to send them our way. As always, info@hailtrace.com is a great way to get in touch with us. You can also go and call us, 855-334-4245. Find us on Facebook. You can find us on Periscope. You can find us on Twitter. I mean, if there's another way that you need to find us, shoot it over to me so we can be there. Anyway, guys, we've had a fun time making this forecast for you. We hope you enjoyed the forecast. And as always, if you have any questions, if there's anything we can do, just let us know. Take care.